I found it confusing to justify not allowing someone who I loved ejaculate in me when I would let random strangers do that.
It's time to talk.
Now, it might be very hard to comprehend some of the life choices made by my next guest. Thomas is a gay man who deliberately became infected with HIV, and he says he did it for love. G'day, Thomas.
Good morning.
It's just an extraordinary choice that you've made, and everyone will want to know why, and they'll want to know how you came to make it. But let's go a few steps back first. When were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in 2007.
Okay, you're 35 years old now. Do you see your HIV status as a death sentence?
Not at all, no. With the fabulous medication that is now available to us, I'm now healthier, much healthier than what I've ever been in my life. And, the research is constantly going on, and I see people who 5 years ago were taking, 5 pills twice a day, and they were struggling with the side effects of those pills, to where, like, I'm on 3 pills once a day, I have no side effects, and they have improved my immunodeficiency system amazingly, and I'm very healthy now.
Everybody knows they're going to die at some stage. But most of us, we're able basically to crack on with life, I suppose, and just get on with things without having to give too much thought to the concept of how we're going to die. Yet it's a reality. It lives with you every day. You know that you have this virus, and it must make you aware of your mortality. And being aware of your mortality, it must have a huge impact on your life, doesn't it, on a day-to-day basis?
I think that death is so random that even with the choice of becoming HIV positive, I think the way and when I'm going to die is completely out of my hands, and fate only has a hand in that. I could die of a HIV-related illness, while I could also be hit by a bus leaving this studio today. So at least if I do die from a HIV-related illness, I'll know I know what it will be.
And is there some comfort in that, in understanding, what you can expect? Because like you say, most of us don't know how it's going to happen, but you have some comfort, perhaps, in understanding what to expect.
To be honest with you, Tim, I really don't think I will die of a HIV-related illness. With the medications around these days and the constant research that is still going into medication, I will probably live longer and more healthier than maybe you will. My immune system is perfect. I'm classed as what is now undetectable. My T cell counts is so low, and I'm actually looking forward to a brighter life now than what I did.
So this isn't denial speaking, is it?
No, not at all. While I was in the process of coming to a decision about whether I wanted to become HIV positive, dying was a huge part of that thought process, and not denial.
Fair enough. Now, you're openly promiscuous. You were before HIV and since. You told me that off air. Can you estimate how many partners that you have had in your lifetime?
I'm going to say between 2,000 and 3,000 partners. That was prior to becoming HIV positive. So there was a lot of interaction with a lot of men, not always practicing safe sex, and I guess you could say I dodged a bullet for many years.
And at some stage in your story, you met a man and you fell in love, yeah?
Absolutely.
And it was your love for that man that led you to this choice to become infected with HIV. Can you take us through that? It's an amazing choice. It's an amazing decision. Take us through it. Okay,
well, I met my partner when I was 29, and at that time, as you said earlier, I was being quite promiscuous with a lot of men, and my partner, he told me straight away that he was HIV positive, and he was diagnosed as being positive at the age of 16. At this stage, he'd been positive for about 14 years, and I met somebody who, I found love for the first time. I fell in love, and
you knew before you slept with him that he was HIV positive.
Absolutely,
he disclosed that to you.
Absolutely. When we met, I wasn't going to. I didn't see a husband straight away. Being a gay man, I met lots of people who are HIV positive, and I admired his honesty straight up, and it was great. So we started dating, and after about 6 months of being together, and I'd fallen in love for the first time, and we agreed that we were going to be a committed, loving relationship.
What was it about him in particular that made you fall in love? What did you love about him?
I guess, I was 29 and, I wasn't looking for love, but I was certainly hoping it would come to me. And the thing with Robbie was that sometimes not all gifts come in packages that you expect them to come in. It was unexpected. It was instantaneous from both sides. It was amazing. And, but when I met him, I didn't consider becoming HIV positive. This wasn't something that just happened overnight. This was after 6 months of being in a loving relationship, and I was meeting all these people with HIV who weren't happy, and I wanted Robbie to feel happy in his life and not let HIV be the centre or the focus of his life. We had a loving, wonderful sex life prior to me coming HIV. It wasn't the focus. Like, there's many things you can do without having to be in fear of contracting HIV.
This is where it starts to really intrigue me, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, in a sort of very morbid type of way. Mm-hmm. You could have led a relationship that was safe and where you took precautions.
And many people do.
So at what stage did you both start having a discussion about the fact that you should also become infected?
Well, as I was saying earlier, I was very promiscuous prior to meeting my partner, and there was certainly a wall there sometimes sexually, because he couldn't fulfill his lovemaking to me that in a way that a loving couple do. And prior to meeting him, I would let lots of men do that to me. So
the HIV was a barrier.
If I let a stranger do that to me, why wouldn't I let someone who I loved do that to me? Can
we just call a spade a spade? What are we talking about? Are we talking about anal sex?
Anal sex. This is where...
So you couldn't let him give you anal sex?
No, I would let him, absolutely, but it was the ejaculation into...
Okay.
The ejaculation. As long as there's no fluid coming out of the penis while you're actually having sex and penetrating, then the chances of transmitting HIV are very, very low.
And this was a very powerful barrier in your relationship, by the sound.
Absolutely. Well, being in love, we were both in love, and I wanted to show him how much I loved him, and I found it confusing to justify not allowing someone who I loved ejaculate in me when I would let random strangers do that. So
the obvious question many listeners would be wanting to ask is, wasn't it good enough for him to do that wearing a condom? Or is it just not the same?
Basically, I fell in love with someone for the first time, and this was a barrier, and I didn't want it to be a barrier.
So who raised it as a subject in terms of the possibility that you would become deliberately infected with HIV? How did that become a subject between the two of you? I
started talking to it with my best friend without my partner knowing, and each conversation led to this topic about, should I allow him to infect me? Should I allow myself to become infected? Prior to meeting him, I had several close calls and, several checks, sexual health checks where I thought that they're going to tell me I'm positive, and, I was very fortunate that it didn't, but yeah, it seemed to make sense. So,
were your friends trying to talk you out of this?
As the thought of me doing this grew, I started talking to other HIV positive people, men and women, asking them their journeys with HIV and what it's like being positive, and that then led to me discussing with them my thoughts about possibly becoming HIV positive, and it wasn't just about the health consequences on me; it was also about the social consequences of living in a community of a lot of gay and lesbian people, where I would have to admit that I chose to become HIV positive, and some people would see that as a very, very bad choice. And
absolutely. What astounds me about what you've spoken to me about so far is just how much thought you put into this. Some people, when I said at the top of the show that you had deliberately went out of your way to become infected, would have said, wow, he must have done that on a whim, he must have been drunk, he must have been on drugs, mentally unwell for a period. But even now, all these years later, you look back and you can say it was calculated.
Absolutely.
And it was very deliberate, and it was very researched. And you spoke to doctors about this, I understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. If it was 20 years ago where the medication wasn't at the level that it is today, this would never have been a choice that it would would have even come into my brain. But as I was talking to people and who were living with HIV, talking to doctors about what it's like, you know, the medicines and stuff like that, the negative impacts definitely were less than the positive impacts that of sharing this with my partner, who I loved. He loved me.
So were you realistic, though, looking back? Were you realistic? Because it sounds to me like you're saying you felt like even though you were going to become infected, there was a good chance that it wouldn't necessarily be that death sentence because of the advancements in treating the disease. Were you realistic looking back?
Death was never a thought. Like, I know I'm not going to die from this disease. Definitely the journey of living with HIV, I expected the worst. I expected to have sleep deprivation, weight loss, you know, problems with side effects from medication. So I went into this thinking that the worst possible scenario.
Tell me about the first time that you raised this with your partner, when you told him, I don't want to take the precautions anymore. How did he react?
I think he was surprised, but I think he could also feel the love in my heart, and that's where it was coming from. It was coming from a place of love. This was not from a place of, I want to be infected with HIV. This was coming from a place of, I love my partner and I want to share this journey with him as we would share our lives together.
Did he try and talk you out of it?
Absolutely he did. Absolutely he did. And he was the one who encouraged me to go see his HIV specialist with him.
What did he say to you?
He wasn't just fearful of the medical repercussions on me of becoming HIV positive, but also the social impact of himself
being stigmatised
by people in our community because he has actively infected another person.
So he insisted that you go and see an HIV specialist together, is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Did this HIV specialist, did his eyes pop out of his head when you told him that you were thinking of taking such a risk? When I was diagnosed with HIV, the campaign that was being run by the AIDS Council of New South Wales at the time was that 45% of HIV infections in gay men were happening in relationships. So at the time, I was just a statistic. That not necessarily deliberately, though.
No, a lot of it wasn't deliberately. It was from infidelity and partners straying and not telling their partners and becoming infected and coming home and having unsafe sex. So the doctor came from a medical standpoint. We asked for personal opinions, but he reiterated that this is my personal choice. He cannot tell me what to do.
But surely his medical advice was continue taking the precautions.
Absolutely, absolutely. He was.
So effectively, you ignored doctor's advice.
But in that same breath, no, I did not ignore. He didn't say don't do this. I think he too saw that this was coming from a place of love. And when I went in there and spoke to the doctor, it wasn't about I want to become infected. What do you think? The topic was I'm in love with my partner. This disease is in the way. I'm having these thoughts. Can you please give me some advice? So he knew straight away this wasn't coming from a place of, once again, I want to be infected with HIV. This was, I want to share my partner's life journey and let him know that he's not alone in this and I will be there for him.
Can you talk to me about that first night, day, that first occasion when you had that unprotected sex? Was there a last-minute conversation? Do you really want to do this? Were you scared?
The connection of us that evening was very strong. We were very aware of, yes, it wasn't about second thoughts from either of us, but we were certainly living in the moment at that time. And unlike many people out there who have become HIV from unknown sources and they can't pinpoint an exact time, I'm really glad that I'm able to say that I know when I became infected. I know that I was having a loving, intimate time with my loving partner when I became infected. And
that means a lot to you.
Absolutely. Because when you hear the stories of other HIV men and how they became infected...
It's sordid.
It's sordid, and some of them are sad, and some of them are, as I said, from partners who were being, who were cheating on them. But
most commonly, people who just don't know at all.
Don't know at all. And
a lot of people are going to take aim at your partner when they listen to this. They're going to say, why didn't he prevent this from happening, they will. Because it comes across as selfish. So what I'm wanting to know from you is, what do you think he got out of this choice that you made? I mean, is it a little bit Romeo and Juliet? Was there some comfort for him in knowing that you would share this terminal virus?
As far as I'm aware from my communication with him, which is quite often about this subject, was that I did my research and I didn't just jump into this without any consideration for all the consequences and all the possibilities.
Do you think that absolves him of guilt that possibly should be levelled at him? This wasn't just your choice, it was the choice of both of you.
I can't answer that because he's not here. I wish you could,
What do you think he got out of it, though? On a personal level, on a psychological level, what was the benefit for him?
Well, any loving couple knows that when an orgasm shared is a beautiful thing, and for that night when I became infected for the first time, we were able to complete that. To consummate your relationship? To consummate our relationship.
Wow.
We've jokingly said several times that night was our wedding night. Yeah. That being infected was like us exchanging wedding rings,
Thomas, you're not together with this man anymore.
No. It's only just recently happened, so falling out of love for the first time.
Where are you left now?
The choice of becoming HIV positive has come up several times in the last couple of weeks, specifically since I've split with my partner, and whether it was the right choice to make. And now that we're not together anymore, I have to go out into the world as a single positive, HIV positive man now, not just a single gay man, but a single HIV positive man. And I've questioned, quite often, as I said in the last couple of weeks, whether this was the right choice to make. And every time I think about it, the answer is always the same, and that's yes. I do not regret making this choice.
Can I ask you something? And I'm not saying this applies to you, but some people would say that a person who made a choice similar to the one that you made, that might suggest that there was a great sadness about that person or a torment prior to them making that decision. What type of person were you before you made that decision?
Oh, look, I'm a very free-spirited, fun-loving individual who
Were you lonely?
There was moments of loneliness, but I think that even within a loving relationship, there's still moments of loneliness. Absolutely, I was lonely, but I had wonderful friends and family in my life, and I was always hoping that I would meet somebody. I guess I was one of the classic examples where I actually stopped looking for love, and that's when I found love. So how
do you feel about your partner today?
The fact that he gave me HIV does not enter into the equation when I think about how I feel about him now that we're not together.
Was it a factor in the breakdown of the relationship?
No, not at all. No. When I chose to become HIV positive from him, I was hoping I would spend the rest of my life with him.
Of course.
And I've spent the last 6 months trying to salvage my relationship and to try and make it work. Unfortunately, the things that were problems in my relationship were not mine, and therefore I can't fix them. So I've had to now walk away and with a broken heart and a bit of anger in there as well because it didn't work out. But I still wouldn't make any other choice. Unfortunately, I'm going back to being promiscuous a little bit. And
is it hard to find partners who are willing to sleep with you now that you are HIV positive?
Yes. Well, no. The network of HIV positive gay men is very strong and very tight. So being able to source other HIV positive sexual partners is not difficult.
So typically you are sleeping with people who are also HIV positive these days.
And we call that sero-sorting with an S, S-E-R-O, sero-sorting, where I just seek to have just HIV positive men as sexual partners.
So do you deliberately stay away from HIV negative people?
No, but there's a lot of...
They stay away from you?
Yes, because there is a lot of even in the gay and lesbian community, there is still a lot of there's still a lot of misinformation being passed around about how HIV can be transmitted. There's a word that goes around that is really upsetting to me, and it's upsetting to most gay positive men, and that's the word clean.
Clean.
Clean, yes. Are you clean of disease? And now that I'm a single man, I get asked that quite a lot, and I've been called lots of things in my life as a gay man, but I find that word one of the most offensive that I've ever
because
heard
the
in my life.
implication is you are dirty?
Dirty and filthy. And when you live in when you're a community of gay men we've been victimised our whole life, to be victimised within my own community by my people, it's very hard. So,
and you should, at the very least, have the support of your own community, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yet you don't.
Absolutely.
But can you understand from the other point of view too that people who are promiscuous, like yourself, would only want to be promiscuous with people that they consider safe? I understand the word clean specifically being quite offensive, but do you respect that some people just don't want to sleep with you because of your status?
Absolutely, absolutely. Many years ago, when I was a single man, I rejected other HIV positive men as possible sexual partners because they were HIV positive. And when I was a single gay man before becoming positive, I did assume that probably 1 out of 50 men that I asked whether they were positive, and they said no, they probably were. And
either without knowing or knowing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
A
lot of people don't get tested. That's, as I was saying earlier, added to my decision to become HIV positive, because there were so many opportunities in my past where I could have become positive that I guess it was just luck that I wasn't. But
I mean, that logic that it was inevitable anyway is almost akin to being
not inevitable, but the odds were definitely increasing that I was going to, or decreasing that I was going to become positive.
But it's still similar to, for example, being in a war and shooting yourself because you feel like it's going to happen anyway. I mean, to me, that logic is hard to follow. I respect it, but it's hard for some people to follow.
I guess. So often in life you see people die in such surprising ways, doing things that you wouldn't expect, you know. Mothers dying in childbirth, people dying while on holidays, people dying driving to the beach with their children. So,
but the difference is they're accidental deaths and they're not planned.
No, absolutely. But
your course of action was premeditated and planned. And some people would consider it suicide, but just not instantaneous.
Definitely not suicide. That's where all the research that...
That's what you actually really object to, that school of thought, don't you?
Absolutely,
so explain to me why.
Sometimes when I have conversations about being positive and what it's like being positive with heterosexual people and other younger gay men, I sometimes find myself almost selling HIV, because the negatives of being HIV positive are much less than the positives from my point of view.
In saying all of that, Thomas, are you scared at all of your future?
No, no more than anybody else. I'm more scared driving in my car to work every day than what I am along that freeway, and then I am about having HIV. When
you get a few symptoms, like flu-like symptoms, you're not scared?
No. Before becoming HIV positive, I was like every other man. My health was secondary to everything else. I only went to the doctor when it was severely needed. Since becoming positive, I see my doctor every 3 months. I have my blood checks regularly. I see a dietitian. So my health is more of a focus now than ever before.
If you met another person, a person who was in love, particularly, I suppose, a younger person, and they were contemplating something similar to what you did, to take on a virus with no cure for the sake of love, effectively, what would you say to them?
Everybody's journey in life is their own. I would not be recommending to anybody to become HIV positive, because that's the choice and decision that everybody has to make for themselves. I can only tell of my journey and my truths and my realities of this. And while I'm not trying to suggest that this was a positive choice in my life, and which would encourage others to do the same, I hope that they focus on the individual circumstances of their lives and make their choice themselves. I think it's really hard for people to have a different view on HIV when for so long we've had the Grim Reaper image in our head of the death sentence and this horrible life, and people laying in beds, you know, looking gaunt and yellow and sickly and dying of a horrible death. The HIV of 2012 is very different from that.
Thomas, thanks for sharing your story on Time to Talk tonight.
Thank you.
Good luck with your journey.
Thank you.